Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and I'd like to welcome you to the next video in my deck collection series. Today we'll be taking a look at my contemporary style decks. So these are the decks that are primarily the ones that have a more contemporary artwork or a more modern take on the tarot. Quite a few of these decks have some bleed over into my other categories, but for the most part what you will see here does have a more modern look or a system that is a departure from the norm. There are a total of 18 decks featured in this video, so you will find a complete list in the description box below. As I have mentioned before, I have included both tarot and oracle in this video, but you'll find all of the oracle decks at the end. So let's get down with my contemporary tarot and oracle decks.
Assessor of Beto Tarot, or Sassy Burrito as it's most commonly known. Beautiful back. It is a little bit glossy, but I really don't mind it in this deck. Again, that gold gilding, not my favorite, but I can live with it. This deck has gorgeous artwork. I love it. It's a very clear reader. It's just beautiful. And I love that the artist is from the Pacific Northwest because that's where I am. So it's just, I mean, everybody's seen this deck. Everybody knows this deck. Everybody loves this deck, and for good reason, because it is just such a fabulous deck. It's such a fabulous reader. And even though it's got that like glossy cardstock, I really don't mind. This is the Emperor, is one of those that people either love it or hate it. For me, I get like this total like Mad Men vibe off of it, so I actually kind of like it because it feels very Mad Men to me. Well, it's just a stunning deck. It really is. This is the one card in the deck that really isn't my favorite, and that's just because that's not how I see the Three of Swords anyway, but I can totally work with it. So gorgeous deck. Looks beautiful on the table. Oh yeah, see that death card? Oh, chills, love it. So that is the Assessor of Beto. So next up we have the Black Lily Tarot. I love the backs of these cards. I just think they're so cute. So this is an indie deck that you can get on Game Crafter. And it's tiny. It's like, they call this bridge size, poker size, I don't know. It's tiny. It's a little tarot deck. It's not standard size. This again is another like funky little weird tarot deck, but I think it is so freaking cool. I love this deck. It is a kick your butt tarot deck. It does not shy away from the hard truth. There is a lot of nudity in this deck. Probably should have pointed that out before I started flipping cards, but it's just a really powerful tarot deck. And the artwork is really interesting, and I just find it a fascinating deck to read with. But again, like I said, it is at least for me, it's like kick your butt tarot. Like, stop goofing around, get your shit together. This is what needs to be done. And I just think the artwork is fabulous. I wish that it were a little bit bigger, which I don't hardly ever say, just because sometimes these cards do have a bit of detail in them. Like there's a good one like the Chariot. There's some detail in there, and if it were a little bit bigger it might be easier to see, but in general I love smaller decks, so the size really doesn't bother me any. Like I said, there is quite a bit of nudity, and but again, that doesn't bother me at all. But it's just, yeah, this deck is so, like, it's feminine and it's powerful. It's like powerful feminine energy. There are men in the deck, but it just has that feel to me. They are primarily feminine in this deck, but it's just a fantastic, like, no nonsense tarot deck. And it is definitely one of my favorites for when, you know, I want a reading and I don't want to mess around. Like, I want a clear answer and I want the hard truth. That is what this deck does for me. This is my hard truth deck. And so this is the Black Lily Tarot. So next we have a tarot deck that has the worst backs of any tarot deck, and I do plan on rebacking this deck. This is the Tarot de Ozarts, and this is a standard Marseille. Now, the reason I didn't put it in my collection of old world decks, even though it is a Marseille, is because I I really feel like it has a really modern, contemporary interpretation of the Marseille Tarot. And so I really consider this a modern deck, even though it's definitely a Marseille style tarot. It definitely has the older imagery. It has the older, isn't that gorgeous? I mean, it has the older figures for the majors and the quartz, but it is I think that it's the art style makes it, in my opinion, a very contemporary looking deck. And the fact that all of the cards have different backgrounds is just really interesting. And I'm sure you guys have seen this deck before. I do plan on rebacking mine because I just can't. I think it detracts from the deck, to be perfectly honest. So that's another video for another time. But see this? I mean, look at this devil. He's so cool, but this is a very contemporary representation of the devil. So that is why I've included it in this collection. Love this Three of Wands. How beautiful is that? It's one of my favorite ones. Anyway, this is just an absolutely gorgeous one. This is, I believe, it's an indie deck, and I believe it's available on, I'm going to say Printer Studio, or one of those, but look at the cards when you fan them out. Like, all those colors. How cool is that? I just love that. Anyway, this is one of my favorite Marseilles for sure. It's definitely one that pairs really well with my contemporary decks, so I really enjoy using it for that. So that is the Tarot de Ozarks. So next up we have my Marielle, which has been on my channel a lot, and I just have to show you my bag because I love the inside of it. It's kind of this was one of my first bags, so it's not real well made, and it's like poofy for some reason, but it works well, and I love it. This is my Marielle, which I have featured on my channel multiple times, so I'm not going to go into huge detail about it. I have rebacked it and trimmed it, taken the titles completely off. This deck is, this is just one of those decks, right? This is one of those decks that just gets at it. Like, it's the deck. It's one of the decks. I love this deck. I have done a ton of work with this deck. It's so visceral. There's so much going on here. It's such an expressive tarot. And the artwork is just it's just stunning. And I think it's a deck that really does require you to do study with it. And that was one of the reasons, which I've said 900 times, so I won't go into detail, but one of the reasons why I took the titles off was so that I would have to use the book. So that I would have to study this. I mean, look how beautiful. Anyway, so it's just a deck that I think if you really take the time and dive deep into it, I think you get just, it really does something special. It's just beautiful. Love it. So that is my beloved Marielle. Next up we have the Texture Tarot, which is another indie deck, and I think the backs are really cool on this deck. But this is a collage deck, and I am not in general a fan of collage decks. This one, however, I think is really freaking cool. I was on the fence with this one for a really long time, and then I think I got it from Phoenix and Lotus. I think they were having a sale, so I picked it up. Anyway, I mean, I'm really, really glad I did because I do really love it. This one reminds me of the Tiltwick. Every time I see this card, it makes me think of the Tiltwick. Anyway, I think it's a really cool deck, and I love that if they can see the color palette of the minors. I love when decks do that. That's really cool. There are a couple of cards in here, to be perfectly honest, that really missed the mark for me, but nothing that I can't live with. The biggest challenge for me with this deck is this cardstock. This is like, there's no give to this. It is like cardboard, and it's super, super thick, and that, although I haven't done a lot of work with this deck, beautiful. I feel that that's going to be an issue that I'm going to have to overcome with it because I am a riffle shuffler, and that's not going to be possible with this deck, and that's going to drive me crazy. And this guy looks like Indiana Jones to me. I don't know why. It's a gorgeous deck, and I think it might be my first collage deck, but I am willing to give it a go because I really do like the images, and I didn't think I was going to. I mean, I've seen them online 100 times and been like, you know, there's some of them like that one, not really my favorite, but there's some of them, that one's really cool. There's some of them in here that are just spot on, and I think that makes up for the ones that maybe missed the mark a little bit. So I really am glad I have it. I'm looking forward to working with it more, and we'll see how that cardstock ends up working out for me. So that is the Textured Tarot. Up next is my little trimmed and rebacked Nicoletta, and I've made this cute little bag for it, which I showed on a different video, and I really have got to finish up my work with this deck because I need to be able to get these flags off of it. Every time I've showed this deck in the last few videos, it's had these flags on it. But that's because I'm in the process of reordering this deck and working with it in a new way. Anyway, I've kept most of the minors most of the majors in order, but again, I showed this in another video, so I'm not really going to go into it. I reordered the Chariot, reordered Strength. But anyway, this is a deck that if you check out my February wrap-up, my February 2019 wrap-up, I go into a little bit more detail about this deck and what I was doing with it. This is a deck that I did not want. I resisted, I suppose I should say. I resisted for a very long time. And when I had a dream, and I never have dreams about tarot decks, but I had a dream, so I had to get it, and it's been an adventure. So now it's kind of a deck that I totally love. Isn't that how it generally works out? Anyway, I'll do another video going into my whole tab reorder thing, but for now, this is just a collection video, so this is my little Nicoletta. So the next deck is the Tarot of the Lucid Slumber, and I believe that is the name of it, because this is a very new deck to me. This is a deck I got in a trade. It's got interesting little backs to it. They're like hand-drawn. I believe this was a Kickstarter. I did not back it because I got this in a trade. So I think it was a Kickstarter deck, and I really don't know much about it, so I'm going to have to do some more research, but it has that hand-drawn effect that I really, really like. There are a couple of cards in here that I've gone through and I've looked through, and there's a couple of cards in here that I'm like, I don't know about that. But, no tarot deck is perfect, right? It has a bunch of extra cards for, I think, the World. Yeah, Judgment, the World. Oh no, it's not extra cards for the World, it's just extra cards beyond the World. So we have the Historian, the Fruit of the Dead, the Door. This one is super cool. I really like this one. And Frenzy, the Mirror. And then we go into the minors. Anyway, I haven't really worked with this deck. I've just looked through it. So I'm not really sure what the significance is of those cards, but they're pretty cool. So it's pretty, from what I can gather, it's fairly Rider-Waite-Smith, but it's just an interesting take on it. And I don't know, I really dig this kind of hand-drawn vibe. There is nudity. It does have kind of a sensual type feel to it in some of the cards, similar to the Black Lily. But this was one of the cards that I'm like, oh, yeah, I don't like that. Don't like that one. But the rest of them are pretty cool. There's only a couple of them in here that I'm like, oh, no, that's, Anyway, so I don't really have much of an opinion on it other than the artwork, which for the most part I think is really pretty cool. But there are one or two that I'm like, oh, no. Like the Hierophant in the Marielle, which I've come to terms with, so I'll probably come to terms with the ones in this deck as well. So that is Tarot of a Lucid Dream. Is the Japaridze Tarot. This is a deck that I know everybody has seen, but it is a deck that I'm struggling with, to be perfectly honest. I haven't really given it the time and attention it needs. I do not like this card. I know that a lot of people have said the same, so maybe it's something I can work through. The artwork is stunning. I'm not saying anything about the artwork. It is absolutely stunning. Do not like this moon card either. That's another one that like, don't know about that. Anyway, this is beautiful. Yeah, this is a deck that I'm just, struggling with. Beautiful. See, again, it's not the artwork. The artwork is beautiful with the exception of a few cards that I don't like, and it's not that the artwork's not beautiful. The artwork is beautiful. I just don't particularly care for the imagery that's being portrayed. But anyway, I don't know if this is maybe one of those decks that I just need to work with a little bit more, because I do love the imagery, but we're having a hard time getting along. So it's a deck I gotta keep working at, and do, maybe do some deep dive work into and see if we can maybe find ourselves a little bit of an understanding. So gorgeous artwork though, and I know it's a favorite of many, many people. So that is the Japaridze Tarot. Okay, next we have my Delos Tarot. Sorry, that's just hanging out there. So I'm moving everything. So this is the first edition. So here is the backs, and I have trimmed this, and yep, it is what it is. I know it's out of print and it's first edition, but it is what it is. I did show this in the my deck mods video, and I had to say, like, I love it trimmed. I don't even care that it's out of print. Anyway, this is my absolute favorite Rider-Waite-Smith clone. It is so freaking adorable. I just love this deck. This is one of those decks that just makes me super happy every time I pull it out. It's just such a fun deck. It's an easy reader because it is definitely Rider-Waite-Smith, but it is so stinking cute. I just love it. It does have great matte cardstock, but they are a little bit sticky. But you can see, like, I love the distressed look of it. I just think that's super cool. So yeah, so that is my Delos Tarot. Next we have my Dreaming Way Tarot. There's the beautiful backs, which I love. I've edged it in green to match those gorgeous backs. And this is a deck that I have trimmed, so it's also in my deck mod video. This deck is such a cute deck. It's a lot of fun. It's one of my favorites. It's a really easy reader because it's very Rider-Waite-Smith. But I just love this kind of contemporary vibe of this deck. And the artwork, I want to show the death card because I love the death card in this deck. Even though that's kind of like, has a sort of pseudo-Victorian look to it, it's still very contemporary. So it's just a gorgeous deck. I love the pages in this deck. It's one of my favorites. So there you go. So that is my Delos Tarot. Nope, wrong. That is my Dreaming Way Tarot. So next up I have the Coffeetaro, and it came with this little bag. You got to pick your own bag. This is an independent deck, and the backs are really cute. It's very much a hand-drawn deck, so it's really large. It's like, oh, there you can see, there's the title card, and I'm totally upside down. This deck, I haven't actually read with this deck, to be perfectly honest. I really just look through it. It's a little big and bulky for me to use, and it's really thin. Like really, really thin. I just think the images are so super cute. Several of the cards have been renamed, and which totally works for this deck. So it's just cute. I'm not gonna go through the whole thing, but this is one of those decks that's just, it's a super cute deck. There are no numbers on the majors, so you kind of just have to figure out who's who. But yeah, whoops. It's a little bit like laminated. It's not really glossy, but it feels like it's laminated. I'm not fond of the quartz in this deck. I don't know. They just don't do anything for me. But the majors and the numbered minors are really cute. They have great little images on them. So yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's just a cute little deck. It's just one of those that makes me smile. And it does come with 4 elemental cards, which is kind of neat. So yeah, so it's just a cute little deck. I don't know, it's not really a practical deck, I don't think, but it's cute, and I love coffee, so I love this deck, and it will probably always be in my collection just because, it's coffee, right? Yeah. Okay, so that is the Coffeetaro. So up next we have the cute little Mesquite Tarot, and it did come in this little bag, which is really cute, and I do keep it in that bag. Here's the backs, and this is really like a mini deck, and it is super slidey. Like, it's not really glossy, but it's very laminated, and the images are very simple. It's very much a minimalist deck. Oops, some of my cards are upside down. And it does have a bit of a earthy kind of shamanic feel to it, but then again, it also has a very contemporary feel to it. So these cards do slide everywhere. I love this devil card. I think that's so cool. I really enjoy the minimalistic styling of this deck, and I also really enjoy the quartz. And see, it just goes everywhere. See if I can find any quartz. So there's like the knower, the student, and I can't remember what order they're in. Look at the tower. Tower's really cool. My big finger out of the way. There's another knower. And the hermit. The hermit's so cool. I love that. The student, the novice, the knower, and the leader. So that's the quartz, which I think is really cool. The lovers. So it's a really cool, simplistic little deck, but by simplistic, I don't mean, not without substance, because it definitely is a deck with substance, and I really enjoy reading with it, and I absolutely love the color palette. Look at that. That is gorgeous. This deck actually pairs really well with the Tarot de Ozarks, I think, because they have a similar kind of color palette, and they have a similar kind of vibe. So yeah, anyway, totally not the point today, but that is the Mesquite Tarot, and that is an indie deck. Okay, next we have the Sil Tarot, which comes in this cute little tin. Love decks in a tin. Decks in a tin, yeah. My brain's not functioning today. Beautiful backs. I wish that copyright wasn't on there. Like, seriously, why is it there? Anyway, okay, so I have edged this one in multiple colors, and it's again in my deck mod video, and I put it back in order. But this is a cute little, I think it's really Thoth inspired, which I'm not familiar with Thoth really. I have a very basic knowledge of Thoth or Toth, however you say it. But I just absolutely love the artwork. It is that sort of, dreamy kind of watercolory type work, but I feel like this, and the reason I included it in my contemporary is because I feel like it's a contemporary version of the Thoth, and that's what's on the Princess of Cups there. So that's why I've included it in my contemporaries, because I feel like it is a contemporary version of the Thoth Tarot. And I do love reading with it, and I just kind of ignore the keywords at the bottom, and I just, I use my own tarot knowledge. So anyway, it's such a cute little pocket deck. I love it. So that is the Sil Tarot. So next we have the Tarot of the Sweet Twilight. There's the funky backs. This deck, it is still living in its box because I haven't made a bag for it yet, because I am going to trim it. This is, for me, this is a really, it has a very Salvador Dali feel to it, and I just think that's really cool. It's really weird. The artwork is it's like Salvador Dali meets Tim Burton. I don't know. But look at the devil. How cool is he? So I definitely want to trim it because I'm not wild about all the text, because, low scarabeo. But anyway, I love the colors and I love the artwork in it. This totally looks like Mad Hatter. So yeah, it's kind of like, I guess it does kind of have a darker Alice in Wonderland feel to it a little bit too. So it's kind of like this weird eclectic mix of things, and I just think that is super cool. So yeah, so it's a deck that I definitely enjoy having in my collection, but I haven't used it much because I am planning on trimming it after using it a few times. So that is the Tarot of the Sweet Twilight. So we have my Johannes Das Tarot, which at the moment this deck is out of print, although I did see on the artist's Instagram that she is going to be doing a reprint here in the next year or two, so fingers crossed for those of you who would like to get your hands on a copy, because this deck is super hard to get a hold of. It took me a long time to get my hands on a copy. I believe this is the 3rd edition, but don't quote me on that. So this deck just has a very contemporary take on the tarot. It is very pippish, which I really like, but the images are very kind of modern, and I just really love the color palette. It is in Gaelic. I did make myself a little cheat sheet. But yeah, I really love the color palette of this deck, and I really do like the modern interpretations, which is usually not my thing. But I think it really works well with this deck. And this deck has, if I can find him, let me take a look through here. This deck, there he is. He has my absolute favorite Emperor. I love this Emperor. I just love that he is so stable and solid that he has actually become a part of the Empress's Earth. I just think that is so beautiful. Anyway, my favorite Emperor ever. So I just think it's a really gorgeous deck. I kind of like that it's long and skinny. It's really cool. And I love the limited color palette. I think that just makes it so stunning, and it looks fabulous in a spread. Just laid out on your table, it's gorgeous. I love all the flowers in it as well. So yeah, just a beautiful deck. Like the backs. It's actually a really great size, even though it's long. So yeah. Anyway, one of my favorites for my contemporaries. I don't use it terribly often because it is out of print, so I might get a second copy when it gets re-released, just so I can feel a little bit better about using it, because this was a really hard deck for me to get a hold of, but totally worth it. So that is the Johannes Das Tarot. So this is my trimmed Yolanda Tarot, and I do have a video up, a trimming video up where I showed trimming this deck. I have since then edged it in black. And I took the titles and everything, the borders off. This, I mean, as everybody probably knows, it had the gigantic purple border that was just so limiting to this deck. And this is a deck that I love it. It is so funky and weird. Like, it's a weird little tarot deck. But there's just something about it that is just really cool as well. So it is definitely one of my favorites. It's kind of a fun, funky tarot, but it reads really well too for the most part. Having taken the borders off of it and the titles, I do sometimes find myself a little like, ooh, what is that card? I mean, I know most of them quite well by now, but I did make myself a little photo cheat sheet before I cut everything off so that I could go through and find those cards when I'm like, ooh, can't remember what that one is. So anyway, this is the Yolanda Tarot, and it just, look at that color palette. I love it. So beautiful. The backs are cute, but they're really like, I don't know. They're not my favorites, but they're cute enough. But anyway, just a fun, funky, quirky little tarot deck. I think it's just great. So that is the Yolanda Tarot. So next we have the Sacred Creators Oracle, and this did actually come in a very lovely box, but I didn't have room for it on my shelf, so I still need to make a bag for it. So in the meantime, it is living in this bag, which it's been living in for quite a while now. It's an indie deck, and I'm sure you all have seen it, and it's just, you know, titles with the little image on these really cool backgrounds. It's got this great like matte gilding. This is the type of gilding that I prefer. I do not like that super shiny, sharp gilding. Beautiful backs. I love the simplicity of this deck. The messages are fabulous. It does work really well for like more businessy or manifestation or abundance type things. But I have found it works really well with just about any kind of regular tarot reading as well, because these messages are really universal and they are very on point most of the time, and I really love that about this deck. And sometimes I just pull a card just to pull a card and just to, you know, have it sit out on my table for the day. The guidebook is lovely and it has wonderful messages to go along with these cards. I don't use it because I just really don't need to. I get enough off of just this sort of minimalistic artwork and these words, which is just fabulous. And it's a gorgeous matte, just a really wonderfully produced deck. Like, look how pretty that is. Yeah. So definitely one of my favorite oracles, and I have used it tons and tons. So that is the Sacred Creators Oracle. So the last deck in my contemporary collection is my Oracle of Echoes, and this is one of my favorite oracle decks of all time. Gorgeous back. I have spoke about this deck multiple times on my channel. The artwork is phenomenal. I love the keywords. They work fabulously. There's a wonderful balance of light and shadow in this deck. There's not an image in here that I don't like. There's not an image in here that I have an issue connecting with. There's not a keyword in here that doesn't resonate in some way. So just, yeah, I can't even speak highly enough of it. I think it's just a fantastic oracle deck. Look at that. There's so much there to pick up on. Anyway, I could go on and on about this deck, but I won't, because I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up. So that is the beautiful Oracle of Echoes.
Thank you so much for checking out my collection of contemporary tarot and oracle decks. I'd love to hear about the modern or groundbreaking decks in your collection, or your thoughts on the ones I have shown here, so feel free to leave a comment below. And if you'd like to check out the rest of my deck collection, be sure to subscribe to my channel and click on that little bell for notifications. Thank you again for watching, and I hope you will join me again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.